Okay, great. Okay, so let's do introductions first. How's that sound? Okay, so I can go first, and then we could just kind of do like a simple format, like name, when you started with the program, like year, and you guys are all medical students, right? So we can do like what you guys applied to, because you guys all have applied already, right? Okay, great.
Match coming up.
Yeah. And then we could do just like one random hobby. How about that? Let's see what's left of my hobbies.
You'll probably tired out from all of the socials.
Sleeping is your hobby now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listening to music. So my name's Omar Lopez. I did EMT, Chicago EMT back at UIC in like 2012, I think it was. No, 2013, January 3rd, 2013. So it's been a long time. I have been an EMT I was an EMT all of college, and then afterwards I went to paramedic school right away. Took some gap years working as a paramedic, doing some research too, and then applied to med school. And I matched internal medicine at University of Chicago. So I'm a first year, an intern. So
Nice.
who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Rowanne looks like she wanted to.
Yeah.
Oh no, I spoiled it now.
So I'm Rowanne. I became an EMT shortly after I took the class at UIC in the summer of 2018, I want to say. I took the exam right after and then started working with Vic and Marty and working with Superior. And I also worked as an EMT through undergrad. And then I just went straight through to med school. I'm at UIC, but the Rockford campus.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And I applied emergency, so I'm staying
Nice.
in the field.
Yeah.
I'm Diann. I took this class my summer after my freshman year at UIC, so I think it was the summer of 2019. And then I worked for Victor during the beginning of the pandemic, both as an instructor and then when we were doing those COVID on campus EMT for those people who were quarantined and isolation and in isolation as well. And then I was part of the BSMD program at UIC, so my path is a little different, but I went straight into medical school after undergrad as well. And I'm applying internal medicine as well.
Cool.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm Dan, one of the instructors that's been here for a while as well, just like Omar. But so I really had my start several years ago as well. So in the 2018 region, it was my spring semester of my freshman year. Took the class, came right back to help teach right afterwards because I had such a great time here. So really been teaching since then, and I really had a passion for emergency medicine, which I never thought I'd find anything more that I had a passion in than emergency medicine. And then I ended up applying internal medicine here now as a fourth year. So that kind of surprised me for sure. But great to be here.
That's really cool. So it sounds like three of us switched from emergency medicine to internal medicine, which is, it is what it is. You find what you like, right? And you pursue it. But I wanted to ask you guys how you guys made that choice. Because for me, it was pretty simple. Actually, it was not simple at all. I just totally lied. It was very difficult because I kind of working as a paramedic and as an EMT for many years, it becomes it just becomes a part of you. Telling yourself that you're gonna do emergency medicine for so for me in my case from 2012 to when I applied, I think it was 6-7 years later, it was really an identity crisis that I was having. So I don't know if you guys went through the same thing, but ultimately what it was for me was I liked continuity, and I liked finding with patients the ultimate plan, or the final plan, what's going to happen after the emergency department as well. And I also kind of liked a little bit of primary care too, the clinic. I don't know if you guys like the clinic. It's sometimes people are absolutely hate it, but I thought it was pretty cool. So what about you guys? What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I'd say for me it was an interesting experience for sure, because I was so passionate about it. I had so many experiences teaching this class for how long, working. I worked at the local private ambulance over here for a couple of years as well. Worked with Diann on some of the COVID times we had, even on campus and such. And so it was everything that I was interested in. And really, I think it was once we finally started doing the rotations and you saw what it was and not just what you thought it was, and then you were like, oh, this is a bit different than what I thought I would be doing. And there was some parts that I liked and some parts that I didn't. So really, I liked kind of digging in on and knowing everything about the patients and managing everything about the patients for a longer period of time. So that's really what kind of pushed me away from emergency medicine, and really pushed me towards the internal medicine side. But really, I enjoyed both of them so much that I did a sub internship for both of them just to really make sure.
I
right?
did the same thing, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and but especially because at least at our school, you're not able to rotate through the emergency room as early as you might want to. So you always had this in mind that you're thinking you're going to do this, but then you never get the chance to actually explore it. So I really got some great advice going through third and fourth year, and that is just keep your mind open. Don't think that you're going to settle on anything. Don't keep waiting for one rotation or not. Just stay open, because you never know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
I think I was very similar to Dan. Going into medical school, I wasn't actually sure that I wanted to do like EMS. I tried to go in like with a very open mind. I had no idea. I initially thought I wanted to do pathology because I was seeing this like doctor on TikTok. I think her name was like Dr. Path or whatever. Okay. And she was like a queer doctor at Northwestern. And she like hyped up pathology. And then I did my first block of histo, and I hated it. So I was like, I rolled it out. I was like, I cannot tell this cell for the life of me. Yeah. But I went in pretty like open. And I think like, the best advice I got my third year was like at the end of every rotation, write out the things you really loved about that rotation and the things you didn't, and what you see that you could enjoy, like even the mundane things, like what can you enjoy on a day-to-day 40 years later in this profession. And so I was trying to go through, I learned very quickly that I was not a surgical individual. I should have known that from the day one when I was doing my anatomy labs. But I think like what really drew me to internal medicine once I finished the rotation was there was such a big focus on like addressing social determinants of health that I didn't realize. Like I thought maybe it's just UIC and that they give you like such great exposure in the Chicago campus, but I felt like every patient we had some area we could optimize in terms of the social health, like connecting them to resources. And I think that was the thing that I really loved about internal medicine, was the continuity of care and like what things can we do to make sure that we keep them out of the hospital? How do we transition care once they leave? And I felt like that was something that was missing in a lot of other specialties. And I think I also really liked, I feel like I'm a really big Agatha Christie fan. So I really liked the detective work, but that's in a lot of medicine. But I feel like I am specifically as well, I loved. And so that really pushed me towards the IM path.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. What about you? What did you decide EM?
So I always had a feeling I was going to end up applying EM, just because of my experience prior to medical school, like you guys were saying. But I wasn't really committed to it because I did want to give every other specialty a fighting chance, especially because I hadn't had experience in each of those specialties. And so I was the type of student where I enjoyed every rotation I was on, where like I could really see myself doing like OB-GYN, I could see myself doing family. Internal medicine, less so, sorry guys. But I still enjoyed internal medicine as well. And it was towards the end of M3 year where I fully committed to applying to emergency. And I think it helped to see every other specialty first. And I had the opportunity to rotate in the ER during third year. I don't know if it's different being on the Rockford campus, but like we got to do it during our surgical clerkship. And then I also did like elective time in the ER there, and I really enjoyed it, and it just solidified my interest in emergency medicine. And I think I stayed in emergency medicine because I liked the variety of medicine. I didn't want to lose a certain patient population or a certain like type of medical diagnosis or complaint. I liked variety. And honestly, I liked acuity, which you don't get in a lot of specialties.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not gonna lie, guys. Sometimes I still like wake up and I'm like, did I make the right choice? Like I'm like thinking about like emergency medicine.
I wonder if that ever goes away. Right?
No, I don't know. I mean, not to say that I'm not having like a good time, in residency and internal medicine. Like I absolutely do think that, but I also applied to EMIM, like the combined programs, and that's what I thought that I was gonna do, EM, like both combined. And I just, for me at least, it was very, the choice was a little bit more simple once I like interviewed at like University of Chicago, and I just like I love the program, and that's kind of what what sent me there. Sometimes I'm like just like going about my day. We go to the ER all the time at University of Chicago with new like admits, and we do rotations there. So I did my rotation there already. We also do urgent care too a lot. We do like urgent care rotations, U Chicago, and sometimes when I'm in those rotations, I'm like, oh my god, like this is so like fast paced. You don't have to worry about like all the other stuff that's gonna come down the line. It's just like quick. The acuity's there, and it's honestly, for lack of a better term, like badass. Like I don't know, I really like. I still really admire it. So hopefully you guys don't go through that, but I also wanted to like talk about. How you think like the class, like the Chicago EMT program, kind of shaped your career, because for me it was a substantial like amount, like it's like has connected me with like so many like great mentors at all levels, and I think like I honestly don't think I would be here if I hadn't taken that first like EMT class, like because I didn't have like the exposure that potentially like other people might have. So I don't know. Does anyone want to go first for that? I can go first too if you guys.
Oh yeah, let's hear your. Let's throw it back on you.
I'm asking a question and then answering it right away. So I was like, maybe I'll give them an opportunity to say something first. So so I mean, it just like in short, it was like mentorship. I think was the biggest thing for me. I started working at like ATI ambulance. So you mentioned Superior earlier. What did you guys work?
I just worked here at UIC.
UIC, okay. And you as well?
I worked at Medics.
Medics too?
Well.
Okay, so we like the three different companies.
On the Saturdays, every Saturday.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I used to do that too, Saturday shifts. So I worked at ATI, and even just like working at ATI, like I feel like I learned a lot about like different people, especially like some of the old timers that always taught me to like be kind to patients, and like have like patience with patients, if that makes sense. But not just that, like I had like some other like mentors like further down the line, like through just like EMS that like connected me with like just like people that I could ask more questions to. I also worked at Norwegian in the ED as an ER tech, and I think that was like the next probably pivotal moment for me. I like I got pretty close to some of the ER doctors there, and one of them eventually like helped me also with that like application process, wrote me a letter of rec, and honestly was a great mentor. Like I learned a lot from him. He actually trained at University of Chicago, but in EM, not IM. I got a lot from him, and then so. The next step after that was kind of like at UIC, where I think the EMT experience really shined a lot with just like skills, like having like basic skills, like you learn a lot as an EMT and as a paramedic, and you can kind of use those skills that not a lot of other people have to kind of like open up this open up this path. And what I'm particularly talking about is, the program that you're still leading.
That's right. Yeah. We're looking for new coordinators this year. Because I'm leaving.
I'm talking about the MPEX program, right?
Emergency Medical Preclinical Exposure Program, if you don't remember that long one. You probably came up with,
I exactly. I don't know. I don't remember who came up with it, but that program, I really thought was a really unique program, because it was kind of like the way that like like med students with like EMT experience can kind of like show off like emergency medicine to like other people that don't have that. Like, you know, as you were mentioning, Dan, there's like a gap, you know, where you go through your first like 2 years, you know, not really knowing how like a field is, and you're just kind of like studying away, and you don't know what like the, you know, end point is. So, you know, that for me, that program was really something that I wish I would have had like earlier on. And also for me, it was different because I like did med school during COVID, so it was a lot of online stuff. We couldn't shadow like at all. But regardless, though, it sounded like it sounds like there is a need for like early kind of exposure to like the field itself. So it just in general, I think that program, I'm hoping it still continues because I think it's very valuable, and I think it's a good way for a lot of like the you know, UIC med students who have EMT experience to kind of be able to show off like the profession and gain more exposure to it. So yeah, that's kind of my like long-winded answer.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I'll add a little bit to it from my perspective as well. So I think your original question was kind of, what did this unlock for us, like being instructors here and such? And I think for me, it just right off the bat is just like I just found a passion for education and teaching.
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
that has been going on. Now it's like my whole resume is just filled with different opportunities of mentorship and education, and definitely came up at every single interview that I went to. So that's been amazing. Just like learning how to teach, how like what's like the night before when you'd be like going over stuff and like, okay, so how am I going to explain this? Like, I know I understand it, but like, how can I explain it best so that other people understand it? And so that's just been a lot of fun, kind of exploring how to be an educator as well. I think that definitely came from this program for sure. And beyond that, I think you touched on this a bit, like just the clinical skills that you learned, just learning what it's like to be in the field. So I mean, this is back when we were, you know, pre-medical students. So do you like working with patients? Do you like being bedside, right? Some people didn't, right? I remember when I was working on the ambulance, there was a lot of people that were more than happy to drive when I sat back there and chatted with the patient, right? Because they didn't necessarily like, you know, chatting with them or sitting next to them. They'd rather be away. They were just there for the job, and I was there to you know, chat and learn and see if medicine was for me. So I think that was an important thing. You just learn a little bit more confidence of working with people, of talking to people, because a lot of medicine is talking to people and building rapport. And there's no better place than in the back of an ambulance when you're both stuck in there for an hour and a half than to, you know, chat. So anything from you all?
Yeah, I want to echo a lot of what both of you said. I feel like there's a lot of mentorship that this EMT program, as well as like the EMT field, offers. And I really fell in love with teaching after studying here as well. But I think something additional that this program offered, at least during the pandemic, was we were like vaccinating individuals back at credit union. And I remember like talking for around like 30 minutes. I probably shouldn't have taken that much time with one patient, but we were talking about like vaccine hesitancy and how like those who were the hardest hit in the pandemic were those of like the underserved population who had the most vaccine misinformation. And I feel like that program was, as well as like how closely Victor worked with the public health team at UIC's campus, was really what pushed me into pursuing a combined MPH program. And so that was what really gave me the experience. And it like EMS is a lot of serving those who don't have access, right, who can't get regular checks. So that was what I really loved about the EMT program. Similarly, I feel like Victor, the fact that he goes to trade fairs in like the high school area and really helps kind of promote what healthcare is to individuals in CPS who've never realized that this was a possible profession, I think that's amazing, and something that hopefully one day when we're physicians could continue on. And that mentorship is something that I want to continue throughout my career as well. But I really just love the culture that Victor brings and how he's transformed all of us, I would say, into people who want to continue to grow medicine in a way that's like healthy, as well as like prevents burnout and helps everyone.
Yeah. I would definitely echo what both of you guys said. You know, we found a passion in teaching and a passion in mentorship. And like you were talking about, Dan, like it came up in every interview for me as well. But I got a lot more out of this program than what I was expecting to. I took the EMT class because it was never really a dream for me to become a doctor. It was just something I considered, and I was just like, let me take a class to see if the medical field is even for me. I ended up sticking with it because I enjoyed it so much. And I think one of the biggest reasons was the team that we were working with at UIC. Like, everyone was very, very motivated, not just to become doctors, but like to provide care and, you know, to bring up the next generation of people that are also motivated to provide care, whether it's like whether they stay in EMS or if they go on to do other things like nursing, PA, or even medical school. And so just being surrounded by highly motivated people like the students at UIC, but also Vic and Marty, was a huge benefit for me. And it still is now. Like, we're finishing up medical school, planning to be doctors, and I still find myself very inspired by you guys and by Vic and Marty. I always tell Vic, like, wow, it's incredible to see where you guys came from and like see where we're going and see all these plans that Vic and Marty have planned, and it motivates me to want to do more with my own education and training, like more than just being a doctor.
Yeah. So just to like wrap up, I'm like super happy with like this program. Like, when I came back, like I think I'm 4 year, end of M3 year, and I was like starting to teach again. It was like amazing for me. Like, I think about all the time, like when I'm finished, you know, years down the road, and when I'm attending, like I would like to like give more back to this program. Like, so maybe if you guys would want to join me when you guys are attending, we can start some sort of scholarship program or something like that.
He's reeling us in. So
you see all this? You guys all said yes on camera. So we'll see. Let's transition though to like your medical school experience. I'm kind of curious because I've like, you know, talked to you guys. I mean, obviously we just met today, but like I've talked to you two, like, you know, off and on, and I don't think I ever talked to you except like last year's dinner. I don't think I've ever talked to you guys about like just the experience in general, like, you know, like how things went and how was step 1 and then step 2 and your rotations and, you know, things, I don't know, just like things like that. And, you know, if you were picking between like any other specialty, I'm also curious about that too. Like, I know other than EM, of course, so, or I am. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I can probably start again. You know, you haven't been to me since in a while, so. But I think overall the journey is an interesting one because you learn a little bit more about yourself, and I think a big point of learning for me was like self-care. So like, you know, remembering to go to the gym, remembering to eat, right? I mean, it's kind of, everyone kind of just thinks, oh yes, of course, right? But you know, you cut that out pretty quick when you get super busy, right? So I kind of had some bad experiences before getting into medical school where like I would overwork myself and never, you know, exercise or anything and end up with like this would hurt or that would hurt or whatnot. And so I think I really explored trying to take care of myself better during the medical school experience. So then when studying for big tests and everything like that, having a nice consistent schedule that included taking care of myself, wellness, right, was absolutely important. And then throughout the entire experience, of course, in the context of like interviewing, you know, you want to be thinking about like exploring the different fields because some of them do have requirements that you need to, you know, prepare for and advance, right? And I think that's on every like first and second year medical student's mind is like, okay, should I be doing research in, you know, ortho if that's what I want to go into, right? Or if I, you know, if I want to go into internal medicine, what do I need to do for that? You know, do you need publications for this or that? So I think that was on my mind as well. But I was pretty set, as I said, on emergency medicine, which didn't necessarily need a lot of research, so I didn't feel too bad about that. But, you know, we still went through everything and landed somewhere where I didn't need a ton of research for, you know, 5 different publications to get the 3 spots that are available. But
Are you interested in any like subspecialties by chance?
Yeah, you know, I've so again, coming back from the emergency medicine roots, I really loved critical care.
Critical care.
So yeah, I know, classic, right? But
yeah, that's where I'm at too.
Yeah. No, I did my medical ICU rotation and just loved it. It was my favorite, really. I mean, internal medicine's definitely way up there as well. But I mean, it was just like kind of an extreme version of internal medicine, which I loved. I mean, I got a lot of my letters of rec out of there, so I feel like anytime you're getting letters of rec, then that's it's going okay, right? But I looked at that, and then I think also like infectious disease. I really appreciate infectious disease. A lot of because I feel like they're oftentimes like the educators of the hospital, right? Like because they go around to different attendings and they'll be like, oh no, like listen, let's talk about like what did you order? Like no, we don't really need that, and this and this. And then also just the detailed work that you do in infectious disease, I think is very interesting. And I like that you go through like internal medicine to get to a lot of these, so that you can kind of get a broad set of training, because I really like just everything, right? Just as Rowanne said earlier, like going through each rotation, I loved them all. And so I as you go into internal medicine, it's all adult medicine, but there's still so much pathology out there, right? So I would want to stay to something broad at least.
For sure. That's exactly where I kind of had my like head as far as when I made this switch to internal medicine. I also, what solidified it for me was critical care. Like I did a critical care rotation and I was just like, well, this has a lot of emergency medicine things that I really like. So I think this is going to be like the right move. It's cool too, actually. Infectious disease is something I also thought about too. And particularly, you can do like a critical care fellowship after infectious disease as well, and after EM.
Yeah, after EM, you definitely
can. Critical care fellowship after EM. That'll allow you to work in the ICU or CT, cardiothoracic ICUs, surgical ICUs, anywhere really in general. But I the biggest one was critical care, and then for me like. I want to stay broad, and I feel like infectious disease kind of keeps it broad because it involves like multiple systems, can be affected by like, tuberculosis. You can do anything really, or like lupus, you can do anything, or affect multiple organ systems. So that's kind of a reason why I thought like ID for the most part.
And but I think I appreciate that a lot of people, they often like still work as a hospitalist, like even if you're infectious disease, because it's just like now you can just bring that training that you have. Like maybe you don't want to do that all the time. You still want to see everything. Now you have all this advanced training, right? So of course that's like one of the really big ones, at least in my mind, is like antibiotic knowledge and like oh my goodness, like I'm sure you're going through it. Yeah,
for sure. Antibiotic stewardship.
Oh, there you go.
Are you referencing to Dr. Zai and how amazing of a hospitalist he is on top of being an ID?
Because I mean this man just knows everything. I mean, and I think a lot of that comes from his infectious disease, because if you didn't have that, that's such a big chunk, right?
He's the ultimate detective when it comes to medicine. Do you know Dr. Zar as well?
I do not.
No? So he is like, he used to be like the program director for internal medicine. I actually don't know his official role now, but
associate program
director. Oh, okay. So he's still kind of
in the back seat while they take over and such.
So for me, like the first time I kind of not really interact with him, but the first time I met him, he does this like lecture on like Thursdays that you guys probably are
Czar Report.
Czar Report. I forgot it was called the Czar Report. Basically, residents come in with like a case that they had, like an interesting case or like a complex case or difficult case, and like they are presenting the case to him like little by little, and then he'll ask like a bunch of questions, and then he'll basically figure out like the diagnosis.
Yeah, that's
like,
cool.
Yeah, so it's always really impressive. I don't think I went to one of those where he didn't get it right, like, and I was like, this is so cool. Like, how does this guy do this? Like, it's ridiculous.
And that's what everybody tries to do. They pick out like the rarest cases of like malaria or something like that coming from like a weird country, and he just like hones in on it like nothing else. Like
it's so impressive because he will like also like go down like his thoughts during this. So he'll be like, oh, I want to get this test, but this test only has this sensitivity or this specificity, so if it's a negative, I'm going to keep that in mind and probably get this other test. And I'm like, oh my god, like his brain is playing chess and my brain is playing checkers. Like it's crazy. So but sorry we got off topic. I don't know, did you guys have anything else to
I think like reflecting back on all the years of medical school, like there's a phase to each year. So I'd say like the first 2 years, like you're really learning how to study again.
Yeah.
And a lot of students, like when they enter medical school, were already pretty much like academic weapons in undergrad. But it's just like,
where's he pulling these out from?
it's just a different type of studying that you have to do in medical school. So the first 2 years was definitely like, okay, let's learn how to study. But then the third year, I would say for me was the most difficult because now you have the responsibility of going to rotation, participating in during that rotation, learning as much about that specialty while you're in it, then going home to study because at the end of it, you're going to have an exam. But then also balancing all the things that you have to do in your personal life, like taking care of your relationships, taking care of yourself, like you were saying, Dan. And I think that was a skill that I developed during that year. And like hopefully, again, it's going to be taken up another level during residency.
Oh, yeah.
Because all of those things are going to continue, but now it's just even more responsibility for each of those realms of your life as a resident.
It gets better. I think you know, everything that you guys said about like self-care resonated with me. Like I was like diagnosed with hypertension during med school, and I was like, "What? Hypertensive?"
I think I remember this when we'd be in here because we would be doing vitals, and you're like, "No, it is. It's high." So
Yeah. It's like, and I did take my medicine. Thank you for asking. Dan. Yeah. So you know that was like a big hit because I was like, "What?" Like I've been like, you know, I've run like multiple marathons. I've always been like an athlete like my whole life, and I'm like, "What? Like I'm hypertensive? Like that? Are you sure? Like that doesn't make any sense." So I had to like go on medicine for some time. And like little by little, like as I started to realize, like, you know, like I have to keep up with like, you know, my cardiovascular health. I have to like exercise. I have to eat right. You know, little by little, I was able to beat hypertension and get off of the medicine. But not even that, like, you know, it basically what it came down to it was like making sure I had like a good exercise routine, and sleep as well too was like a big factor too. And then residency, like my first, like, you know, couple of months, I got like GERD. Yeah. So I was
been there. Yep.
I'm just like a huge fan of like the all you can eats. And they
right
get
before
me.
bedtime. Of
Right
course.
before bedtime. And yes, I was laying completely flat right after meals, and I was so puzzled why I got acid reflux, right? So, but I was like on PPIs. I just finished like a course of PPIs, like I don't know 5 days ago. But it was like it was like another shocker. I was like, oh, I gotta like now eat healthier, or like dude, like, you know, I have to change my like lifestyle or like my routine so that this doesn't affect me, you know. And it's just like it's self-care. It's a lot of self-care, you know, that you have to make sure you prioritize, you know, what you have to do so that you can be better for your patients, you know, because like, you know, how are you gonna provide care if you're like dying from like acid reflux, you know? So, but yeah, self-care is a big one.
Yeah, I'd have to say I had very similar experience actually finishing up undergraduate. Really, I started getting like the worst heartburn. And of course, seeing like the specialist, ended up having to go for an endoscopy because I wasn't able to swallow some food. Sometimes I would choke on it and all this stuff, which is like the red flag signs, right? And really, it just kind of speaks to how multifactorial a lot of things were, because I think it really was like it was during like COVID times, had moved back in with the parents, was taking way too many classes before med school. I actually made the pitch to med school, which I think was an honest one for sure, that I was trying to like really challenge myself with like some of the most difficult classes and like stack them all on so that I would like know what to be prepared for, like going back to what Rowanne said, like how to study and such. And I put myself through it, that's for sure. I mean, like neuroanatomy and such, I was taking like, oh my goodness, like a lot of these really tough ones. And I found out that like really, I feel like stress was one of the biggest things for me. Of course, just simple like hygiene things, right? Like I used to like take like a big like protein shake right before I went to bed, like because it was like an overnight like protein shake, right? And it's just like, well, what do you think's gonna happen, right? But no, I mean, and I think these are like great experiences to bring into the field. Like you can talk to different patients about it, or talk to, as we do our mentorship, talk to different students about, listen, you got to take care of yourself because you never know what's going to pop up. Like, is the stress going to lead to the high blood pressure? Is it going to lead to, you know, heartburn? Or
it'll manifest. It'll manifest in one way or another.
It's going to get you if you don't take care of yourself.
Yeah. I someone that I met earlier on in med school was like, if you like don't take care of yourself, it's just gonna come up in one way or another, like you said. I'm like blanking out on the phrase that they use, but it was also, I think, related to sleep. They were like, if you don't sleep, it's gonna like it's gonna get you, you know, you're gonna be tired and falling asleep somewhere, you know, where you don't want to. But yeah, anything that you wanted to share, Diann?
I think a lot of what I was going to say, I echo with what you guys have said already. I think the one thing that I want to add is I feel like UIC, similar probably to Rockford campus as well, I feel like going into UIC, I didn't realize how amazing the support system was. I feel like I didn't realize how important a pass-fail curriculum was, especially as like, I feel like residency applications are moving more towards, instead of like a pass-fail step score, they're moving more towards like, what have you done with your clinical time? What are your interests? What are your passions? How has that shown in your extracurriculars? So I feel like the fact that a lot of UIC's exams were pass-fail was really nice. The fact that they gave us like weeks to study, a week to study exactly, but our exam, not weeks, but a week before with no like academic responsibilities prior to exam. That was really nice. Our synthesis week, so the week afterwards, where we didn't have any exams and new material to study for, but just to really synthesize everything we learned, was really nice. And then I think going into third year, I feel like kind of looking back while I was doing my third year and seeing the patients, like the experiences that I really valued, and like I like ended up journaling those experiences, and that really was nice because I was able to see like what I valued and what specialty I wanted to do, and like something I had, like when residency interviews came up and they started asking about like, tell me about a patient experience that was this. I also had the answer to that, but I feel like it was nice to kind of reflect and find a way to really find what you value and then hold those values close to you. Because like you guys mentioned, I feel like a lot, medicine is draining. That's why there's so much burnout. And I was going to ask you, Omar, later of how you felt like culture in residency is. But I feel like that's a big shift in our generation. And I really love the fact that more people are prioritizing mental health and taking care of yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, like, so I've like been like a medicine intern for like 6 months. And I didn't really, vitamin D deficiency, that was the other one that got me.
You're probably already low in Chicago, but then it was really low.
I think everyone here is vitamin D deficient.
I went to like my doctor. I went to my doctor for some reason. Oh, you know, I just got like insurance through like the hospital, so I went to my doctor.
So you went, ooh.
And he was like, let's get some lab work. I'll check a vitamin D, and I was like, I don't think I need a vitamin D check. I take supplements already. Like, we don't need this. And he's like, oh, you'd be surprised. And yeah, I was surprised. I was deficient, and so I needed to up my dosing. But like going back and just like talking about like burnout really quick, like I feel like the U Chicago is like a really good program, and I haven't really particularly felt burnt out. I think I think is because of the scheduling. 4+2 is the X+Y scheduling is just like really gold. And so basically, in short, what that is like inpatient for like a certain amount of time, X, and then Y is your outpatient, which is clinic. And clinic is usually like only Monday through Friday. You get weekends off, so you get 2 weekends like back to back off. And the scheduling is a lot shorter too. Like you only work like clinic hours. Like sometimes it's like 8 to 4 or 8 to 3. It depends really on the scheduling. So it's really like you're working like a classic like 9 to 5 job for the most part. And so that's like really rejuvenating. You can catch up on everything. Catch up with friends. And that's where I'm at right now. That's how I'm able to be here. Actually,
I was gonna say maybe get the weekends off too. That's what a lot of the programs would advertise, right? They'd be like, oh, oh, so every 5th weekend you'd get
Yeah.
1 weekend off at least, right?
Exactly. And then those inpatient weeks are a little bit harder. It really depends. I haven't like really crossed over to like 80 hours is like the ACGME the limit. So I haven't really crossed over to 80 hours. The closest I've gotten is like 70 something, 74 maybe, and that was in the ICU. The ICU is very busy, and you just have like long hours, and there's no avoiding it. And especially when you first start out, you guys will see like there's like a big learning curve. So it's literally taking you guys like twice as long to do some of the things that like the second years are already doing, because they've learned how to be efficient and stuff like that. So like the efficiency kind of came with time. I remember like M4 year, everyone that I talked to as far as advisors were like, just relax. You're going to be really busy, like intern year. But I just could not. I was like a very anxious like person. And I was just like, I need to do something. Like I can't just like go on a vacation for 5 months and start residency. Is going to hit me like a train. Like, so I did a lot of rotations. I did like I pretty much did every subspecialty just to get experience in some sort way, shape, or form, or like know how the subspecialty works. And I felt like it really helped me out, because when I started, I didn't feel like it was like a cold start. I felt like I still remembered some of the medicine. Obviously, it was totally different because when as a med student you like go from like 2 patients to like when you're an intern, it's just like double or triple. Like depends like how the day is or what the census is like. So I think that all played a little bit into my like burnout. I guess I was playing the long game, trying to prepare. I'm a big fan of like preparing early for like success, like set yourself up, for success later on. So I think that helped me out. I think the X+Y scheduling helped me out with the weekends. I've had 1 vacation so far already, 2-week vacation.
Where'd you go?
We went to Ohio.
It wasn't anywhere Trump destination.
So we went to Ohio. We have a close friend who masts like ophthalmology in Ohio, so we went to go visit him. It was really fun.
That's nice.
I had never been to, so my next vacation is coming up too. It's I think it's in April, and we're still trying to plan it, but we'll see where we go.
So you're both were able to get time off at the same time?
That's another thing. So I couples matched with Monica. We're both like internal medicine residents. Monica's my fiance, and the University of Chicago was amazing as far as like scheduling. We got like all of our vacations together, and we got like we're on the same like X+Y schedule, so we get like our weekends off at the same time. We also get our night shifts, because you have to do nights. We get like our night float blocks at the same time too.
That's really nice.
So nice,
it's great. It's really great, because like we can like when we're working night shift, like if I was working day shift and she was working night shift, like we probably would not see each other. One would be sleeping, and we wouldn't probably talk for like 2 weeks. So it was a big difference. And honestly, the other thing too that I think has like led me to not be burned out is literally Monica. Like we get to like just talk and like decompress after
cute.
like our shifts. And like just like sometimes it's really nice too to like kind of if we have like a patient that we that one of us is like, I could appreciate like what your thoughts are on this patient, because a lot of times we're like trying to figure things out with like patients and like plans and things like that, or like even just with like resources. Like if I think everyone's experience in residency is like really unique. So like some people you might work with like an attending that like another person maybe doesn't work with for like until another year, and that attending might have like a lot of like valuable things that they can teach you. So for me and Monica, it's been really nice, because it's like we kind of pass along like resources, or like smart phrases, for example, for each other. Smart phrases are amazing. So for people that don't know, I guess smart phrases are basically like note templates that other like doctors create. And you can use it to kind of, document everything you did. Because a lot of times, you do a lot with like a physical exam, for example, or like you talk a lot about like an assessment and plan, but it's not like intuitive to just like put it in your note in like an organized fashion that makes sense to anyone that might pick it up and read it, so they can just pick up like the care right where you kind of left it off. So that's where kind of smart phrases come in. For emergency medicine, I have like a ton, like for pretty much every complaint.
I should hit you up.
Yeah. Oh, if you come to University of Chicago, we'll definitely talk. But
I feel like
yeah.
they're also just really nice to learn from, because I
Yeah.
feel like
Oh,
sometimes I read
1000%.
through and I'm
Sometimes-
like, oh my God, I should have asked that.
It just
Yes.
guides like your patient assessment when you
Yeah.
walk into the
Yeah,
room too.
and
Sometimes
that's really what I was gonna say is like I think it's great for specialty care. So like I'm doing like sleep medicine right now,
Oh.
like right, and so they put down like all the things that they ask about, and like I don't know, like if somebody came into my clinic, if I was like in your shoes, like an intern, that I can't sleep, I'd be like, well, how many hours are you getting? Like,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, but there's like so much more
so
that
much,
you can
yeah.
dive into, all these different signs, symptoms, and such.
Yeah.
That'll help you out. So with any specialty, right, you can dive into their smart phrases and figure out what would they ask, right,
Yeah.
and then give them that presentation, right.
Yeah.
So this is why you should see them, right.
For sure. I think like creating your own is like very valuable, but also like stealing them from other people is also
time
really
saver,
great.
yes.
Yeah. And also I love sleep medicine actually.
Oh.
That's another thing that I'm like really interested in considering is sleep medicine. Sleep medicine. Yes.
I actually had a question going back to the burnout, because like that was a big topic for my EM interviews, because like EM has some of the highest
burnout,
rates of burnout compared to all specialties, and so that was a major topic during interviews, and it really guided like the programs that I apply to, or it's guiding how I'm going to rank them too on my rank list. So like things to consider were for me like location. I want to be close to my family and friends, because I really feel like being close to them helps me combat burnout. But then also like what you were talking about with scheduling, so asking all these programs about their schedules. How was that for you guys, like when you guys were interviewing with different programs?
Yeah, I feel like similar to you, a lot of the programs that I applied to initially, it was based on location. Were they close to home? Were they close to like my family as well as my partner's family? And so a lot of my programs ended up being like in the Midwest, California, Colorado. But in terms of like scheduling and culture, I feel like having like upperclassmen in those set institutions was also a big thing. Like I would hit up like Harveen at U Chicago, or I would like ask other people of like, I know your program is advertising these things, which you could find on the website. Like, are they an X+Y schedule that Omar mentioned? Are they a traditional schedule, meaning that at least for IM, they try to block off like some inpatient, some outpatient, but then you might end up like UIC was a traditional schedule until 2 years ago, where I remember my M3 year, I had an intern who was on inpatient for like almost 10 weeks straight.
Oh, wow.
And so she had like a day off on a random Thursday or Wednesday for those, only one day off a week for those 10 weeks straight, which has like traditional has its pros and cons, but like asking people at the institution itself like what they really loved about the institution. Did they like the schedule? What things really drew them? And I was going to ask Omar too about like what really drew him to his program, as well as like how he ended up ranking things or prioritizing things. So asking upperclassmen was really big. And then I think in terms of like responsiveness in a PD too, I think you could get a lot of like the vibes. For example, I went to a second look recently, and I had a friend who went to an emergency medicine second look as well, and she like in her second look they like balled out for dinner. Like the APDs made an effort to see them, the PDs made an effort to see them. They scheduled a bunch of like events, and then from like my second look, they like did a little tour and then had a little bit of coffee that was like hospital coffee. I didn't see any
Been on since
PD.
the morning.
I didn't see any APDs, and I was like, this is a little sus. So like the interview day, like I would ask a PD. I remember asking a PD like about, it was like a brand new PD for a program, and so I was like asking about like what changes they anticipate, like they could see in the program, and he was like speaking political to me. He was like, first we have to reevaluate what our mission statement is. Our mission statement's been the same for the last 7 years. I don't want to say it because I might give it away, but he like listed 3 things, and he was like, I think we'll reevaluate in spring of 2025 what our mission statement is, and then we'll go from there. And I was like, this is such a bogus answer. So I think like interviews and like a lot of it, I feel like maybe you could talk a little bit more about it, but it's like the vibes of what you get on
sussing out
interview day.
people's
That's what I was gonna say.
personalities.
It's all vibes.
It is.
Vibes-based medicine. That's what it is. You like, I actually, so I just wanted to like also share some of the best pieces of advice that I got when I was making my rank list or deciding where to apply. I, was like pretty dead set on like staying in Chicago. Because my whole family's here. I have some family in Texas. I have some family in the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and some family in like Florida too. But mostly my whole family's like here in Chicago. So I was just like dead set on staying here. And I, talked to one of my like good friends and mentors who he's kind of passed the whole residency thing, and he's an attending, and he was kind of he kind of put things into like good perspective as far as like training and how important training is, because you obviously like you need a social support while you're here, while you're in residency, I mean, but also, like, just keep in mind that, like, this is, like, these first couple years out of med school are, like, really going to determine what kind of doctor you are. Yeah. And the training itself really determines, like, what you're, comfortable with or not comfortable with, or, like, what you will excel at. And I just say, like, for example, like, in EM, if you go to a place who, doesn't have trauma, for example, how are you going to, care for a trauma patient, or are you going to just be limited to working at like EDs that don't have like a trauma center, for example, Right. Just like little things like that. Same thing for internal medicine. Every hospital is a little bit different for internal medicine as far as like what they, are known for, whether it be like, renal stuff or cardiology and whatnot. But, I think for me, initially, like, my rank list was all Chicago, and then I kind of started to think about that more, and then I was just like, at the end I was more so focused on like getting into the best program that I could get into. And with that being said, the algorithm is set supposedly more toward the applicant. So I think you guys should be selfish with that in mind, because I'm not sure what the numbers look like for EM, but for IM, I think I remember in my interview trail, someone shared like a statistic basically saying like around like, it was like over 90% of like internal medicine applicants who are like MD, fourth years, they get one of their top 3 choices. So you will likely get one of your top 3 choices.
I think Dan knows the statistics.
Yeah,
you know this.
It's similar actually. I think it's like close to 50% for your first one. Like it's 40 something percent.
Yeah, and those are good numbers.
But as you get to the third, I think it's closer to like 75 or 80% chance that you get one of your top 3, which is, I mean, that's pretty reassuring to me at least. I don't know.
No, it's good. It's good. And like you there's also like statistics too that tell you like how many like programs or how many interviews you would need to solidify like a match, or statistically to solidify matching with a program. But I think that would be like the biggest thing that I would want to pass on to someone else, because my priority, in the long term, I was just thinking about like what kind of doctor I wanted to be, and I wanted to be a good doctor, and I just wanted to do like the best training that I could to kind of pave the way for that. But I and the other thing too is like it was a little bit different for me since I like couples matched. So we had a lot of combinations. We had like 250 or something like that, 200 like combinations that we had to make, and we were stressed. But interviews overall, like for us, like went pretty well. We got a good amount of interviews, and we were very happy. But we were just like kind of stressed about like where we would end up, for the most part. But it worked out, and I think you guys have some faith, trust the process, and you guys are almost there. But it sounds like interviews went pretty well for you guys.
I definitely would say that I was surprised overall at what interviews were all about. I did kind of think it was going to be like a grilling session, like oh, so tell me about this experience. Did you actually do that? Did you actually learn that? Kind of a thing, or like how many hours did you do? Like but no, it was as we've kind of been touching on a little bit here. It was very much like, okay, are you going to be happy here at this program for most of the programs. A handful was like, okay, it kind of like was like red flags sometimes when you would be at some of these interviews and they would be like, okay, so like when you're wrong, what are you going to do about it? Like, and you'd be like, well, that's all you want to talk about is when I'm wrong. Like, you know, it's like, what kind of culture do you guys have there? If that's what we're talking about here. Right. So I think I was surprised by what questions they asked. Some of them had like right there questions, like the different scenarios, like we touched on. But a lot of them were just like, okay, so like, what do you think? What are you thinking about coming here? Like some of them straight up told me, they were like, well, Dan, you know, like you have a really nice looking resume. Like why, like, I feel like you're overqualified to come here. Like, why did you apply to this area? So that was kind of surprising I mean, several places. I don't know if they were trying to like, you know, really talk you up or what during these interviews but I was just like, what? Like, really? I don't know. I didn't think of myself like that. Right. I was like, what do you think about your program? Then I thought it was pretty good, but maybe now I should rethink. Right. But so really, really surprising all around for residency interviews. Like, I mean, it's more of recruitment, I think, and trying to figure out where you're going to be the best match. So you have to come up with what's most important to you. Is it location? I mean, I really wanted a great education from the program, right? So again, Dr. Czar was one of my mentors. So just talking about like kind of board pass rates that each place has, because those are the people that are teaching you, right? So that's the education they got through there. So if it's not high, well, what happened there, right? So I think that was an important one for me. But also, you know, like location and social support, I think as we touched on as well. Just being, I mean, I always grew up around here and have a fiance that grew up around here. So if we were not going to be here, where would we want to be? Where would we be happy at? So you have to ask yourself a lot of those questions and really think about it. It's pretty difficult, actually.
Sure.
I think it's like also interesting because I didn't realize for interviews, like how you should game the system a little bit, especially with signaling these days, which is something new in a lot of fields. And what signaling is, for those who don't know, is it depends on the specialty, but in internal medicine, you would get 15 signals, and 3 of those signals would be gold. So when you apply to a program, you could say whether you want to signal them, and you designate gold, which is the highest, and then the other 12 were silver signals. And so I was also lucky to have Dr. Zai, who is an amazing mentor. Nothing has happened.
Still around, yes.
Yeah, still around, still doing amazing. But like, he was telling me a little bit about like, he has this giant spreadsheet. He's like, these are the programs that only give interviews for those that signal them. These are the programs that give interviews even if you don't signal them. So it's like how to optimize how many interviews you get, which is really interesting because I didn't know going into 4th year that this was like somewhat of like that you have to have some of those like connections to some of that mentorship. And I think it's really like helpful to go to UIC where that sort of mentorship is really big compared to like if you were someone who took a gap year, someone who's an international medical graduate, and you don't get those same support system. It makes it a lot harder for you to go through this match cycle as well.
Yeah. I would say the same. Like when I was applying, I was very confused about a lot of the strategizing for applying to residency programs. So for EM, we also get signals, but you only get 5. And so I was like, well, how do I even use my signals? Like, is it better to just use them at programs where I want to stay at? Like, if I want to stay in Chicago, should I just use them all in Chicago? Or should I try to, like, use them at more competitive residencies, even though I'd be less interested in them? Just things like that. And
there's also geographic, I forgot to mention. Geographic.
There's a lot of strategizing and a lot of politics behind like applying to residency, and every step of the way, like I had questions about it because I don't have anyone in my family or anyone before me that applied to residency. And so I was really using like the people that graduated before me or my school, like I was always asking them questions because I didn't know how to navigate the system.
Yeah. Are you guys all first gen? Like anyone else in your family doctors or?
I have one cousin who's a doctor in Cali, but otherwise no.
Yeah. And that's why I think like mentorship is so important.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
'cause, like you wouldn't get information anywhere else
Yeah.
if it wasn't for like good mentors.
Yeah.
And that, honestly, I feel like there's almost too much information and you don't know how to handle it, right? So like
Yeah.
one of the common things they give us is like Texas Star, which like tells you like, okay, this is like the step score that like the average step score that this program took or whatever. And it's all like, it's like over inflated. Like, it's just like, okay, these are averages. These aren't people. These are just like metrics.
Yeah.
And these programs are looking for people, right?
Yeah,
So you get yourself into a little bit of a hole if you just look up like everything that you can find about the statistics, because you're like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't fit into that, or I'm like the lower end of that. Uh-oh, what's going to happen now, right? So I mean, I think that speaks into like a lot, like when you learn about like imposter syndrome and really remembering how far you've come and you know where you've come from. And
Yeah, no, for sure.
I really liked U Chicago's actually, because I saw that like when up on the recruitment page, they like blind the scores of like your step score, and I really like the fact that they were doing more of a holistic review, because it felt like they really wanted to get to know their prospective residents as a person and about their interests, rather than just like a score that defines them.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I guess like another plug for my program, but everyone like for me, like we were saying earlier, like vibes were very important for me, and people's personalities, like people who interviewed me, you know, the residents themselves in the program, like, you know, how they, you know, talked, and how if they wanted to get to know me versus like were more reserved, you know, things like that. But yeah, I think we have like 30 minutes left. I wanted to like also just do like a quick like one tips for like applying to medical school, tips during medical school, and then tips applying to residency. And then so just like quick, like for people, you know, who are like maybe EMTs now and they are thinking about medical school, you know, and things like that. So does anyone have anything off the bat? Well, we can start with like applying to medical school. How about that? Just tips for applying.
So I think my process was a little different because I was in a combined BSMD. But I think like my biggest tip is try to get the clinical experience to really know if medical school is for you, and if you, because I had a couple of friends who were actually in the combined BSMD program who actually ended up dropping after their first year medical school because they didn't really realize what medicine was, like what it asked of them. So I feel like for those, like I feel like there's a really big push holistic, like for more holistic review in general for medical schools these days. So like really getting more of experience within like working as an EMT, working in like as like an ED tech or some sort of like medicine profession to really see, as well as like shadowing, trying to get that early exposure to see if this field is for them, and that'll translate to giving them experiences to talk about during the application as well.
Yeah. I would say my tip for applying to medical school is actually going to be my same tip for applying to residency and just how to go about medical school in general. But I would say try to think of what matters most to you. Even if it's not really medical related, that doesn't matter. Like try to have some kind of personal mission, and then make the activities and experiences that you pursue fit that mission, so that you're painting a picture of like who you are, so that you could talk about it more clearly in your personal statement, in your interviews for medical school or residency. And pursue activities that you genuinely care about. Don't do things that you think you have to do because everyone else is doing. Like for me, I tried research out and I didn't like it. And so that was it for me. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do research just because like everyone's doing it to get into medical school. That would be my tip for like applying to programs.
That. Yeah, I really like that. I think I'm someone who's like driven by like passion and finding passion in the things that you do. Like with everything that I do, I'm like, am I doing it because I like it and because I truly enjoy it, or am I doing it just to check off a box?
Yeah. And it can be intimidating to like not do those things because you see everyone doing it, but try to like be confident in who you are and in the image you're trying to get across to people and to yourself.
I would say, and genuine too. Like just be your genuine self. Like, don't just try and fit the mold. Yeah. I think I really resonate with that. Do you have anything, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think applying to medical school, I think planning is just so important. So a lot of what Rowanne was talking about, I think is really good points there, is just thinking about what you want to tell them by showing them, right? So, I mean, because anybody can say, like, and I was just talking to some of the EMT students about this, and I go, you know, why do you want to be a doctor, right? And I've some of you, I won't put you on the spot, but you probably could ask. And he said, he goes, oh, well, I want to help people, right? And it's just like, okay, but everybody's going to say that, right? So why, like, and how would you demonstrate that you want to help people and not just say it's because I want to help people?
Yeah, you can help people in like any other field, right?
Exactly. Yes. So, you know, having like longitudinal experiences, I think looks wonderful on any application, right? Because it shows that you're really into it, even if it isn't something that's necessarily towards medicine. I mean, it shows a lot about you, you know, dependability and that you, exactly, right. And that you were a good employee because they kept you around for that long, right? So I think that's an important one. I think also I have kind of a little bit of an interesting perspective because I worked as on the pre-medical org on campus for undergrad. And so I was like the education coordinator, then the vice president and the president. So, you know, I would have chats about people. They were, oh, well, I want to apply for medical school and such. And some people, they didn't really have the grades for it. They didn't have any of the extracurriculars or anything for it as well. So I think that's important to think about. Like I caution you to only look at these statistics and be like, oh no, I just can't make it, because I think everybody has feelings of doubt. But I think if you're at a point where you're so far off, you need to question, is it worth it to spend thousands of dollars? Because that's what it is when you're applying to medical school. Is it worth it at this point to do that? Or do you need to kind of see what your resume is saying about you and if that matches to what you want it to show about you? Totally. And then kind of reassess and go from there.
I 100% agree. I would want to also add, like, meet with advisors early and often. They know more about the process than, you know, a student who's just learning about it, so they can guide you. And I also just wanted to say, like, taking your time is okay too. Yeah. Like, you can go like straight out of, like, you know, undergrad to med school, but really, you know, in life there's not like a big hurry that, you know, you have to do this right away, and maybe you get, like, you know, you might get pressure from like family and friends to like do it as soon as possible. But, you know, as long as you have like a mission and a plan for how you're going to do things, and, you know, you're actually acting on the plan, I think, you know, you can take your time like I did. But I think that's important. Yeah. And, you know, kind of, it's just kind of like going off track too. Well, I just wanted to hear you guys' like opinions on why you guys like chose like MD versus like a PA or NP or a nurse, you know. Does anyone have any specific, you know, because honestly, like, like our field is kind of it's a little brutal when it comes to like hours, and the training is rough, and you know, you don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel until like a long time. There's a lot of like delayed gratification, you know. So how were you guys able to kind of put that to the side and be like, no, this is what I actually want? And like, what do you think like pre-med students should be looking at to decide that like this is the right thing for me? Personally, for me, just in general, for like to dip my toes into the medical field, that's what the EMT class served in general, you know. But like that's only, you know, the medical field itself. Like I could have gone to being like a nurse, for example, or I went on to being like a paramedic, you know. But like, any like thoughts that come to mind for you guys? For that?
I think like the big one that comes to mind is just like lifelong learning. I think if you're the physician, often you're the end of the line. Like you're the one that's expected to know that, and that kind of fit well for me because like I appreciated the challenge of being the one that's expected to know, and I think that's like going to keep me motivated to keep learning and keep expanding what I know, and again, just finding out what you don't know, right? And being honest about what you don't know, I think is important as well. But I think just the idea of lifelong learning just fit so well for me, and just the rigor that you go through just fit well for my personality, and was something that I really wanted to try to challenge myself for. So I think it fit well for me over some other roles where it's the pathway is a little different. You do like clinical like more clinical work and such first, and then you kind of go back and get more of an education. But
I really agree with that for myself too. Like I feel like I like the challenge a lot. Like when I remember when I decided to run my first marathon. This might seem a little bit funny, but I was sitting with an advisor, like a pre-med advisor, that was then, and they were like, well, you know, they were reassessing like my application in general, like, and this was like freshman year of college or something like that, or maybe sophomore year, and you know, they were like, you know, I was like, they were like, what do you like to do for like a hobby? And I was like, oh, well, I like to go on a run. And they were like, well, if you like to run, you know, you kind of need to put something on paper. You can't just like say I like to run. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll run a marathon so I can like put it on. I'm able to write it down, you know.
Jump straight.
I was like, I guess I'll do that just to like put it on like the piece of paper, you know. But I think I quickly realized that like I like challenging myself, and like and like something that I realized in med school too is like you know, there's gonna be discomfort, so much discomfort. You're gonna be uncomfortable so much. Like you're just gonna need to learn how to be okay with being uncomfortable, because that will literally never go away. Probably not even you probably maybe like once you're like a seasoned attending, that might go away, but like it's not going away anytime soon. You're gonna get that pit in the center of your stomach when you get like a new patient with a condition that you haven't managed in, you know, maybe a couple weeks or a couple days, and that does not go away, unfortunately. Maybe it will go, maybe I'm speaking too specific, you know, but it might go away for you guys, but for me it has not gone away. And for a lot of people that I've talked to, you know, that's just something that's very common in the medical field. And I quickly learned to just be okay with that and focus on the challenge and bettering myself. So
yeah, I think sometimes that could be a sign of somebody that really cares, though, right? Because for some people, maybe they don't have that feeling because they're like, well, we'll just do whatever, and now I'm done with this patient, right? Yeah. So I mean, you know, I just think about how like my mom, she was a nurse, still is for 20 something years, and I feel like she really like worked herself really hard, and she really put a lot of stress on herself. She was like, oh, well, listen, like these, you know, the people that are supposed to be helping me aren't doing their job, so then I have to do extra work, right? And it's like, okay, well, it was because she cared, right? That it affected her so much. So I feel like that almost speaks to how much you care, right? Yeah, you want to provide the best treatment and such, right?
For sure.
I forget who said it. It might have been Victor, but I feel like someone said that the best doctor is the one who still gets nervous with every patient encounter, because that, like you mentioned, it's someone who cares, someone who continues to want to learn and improve, rather than someone who just like does the job just to do the job, who just wants the money, who just goes in to do the work and leave. Like, I'd rather have a physician who's like 100% in, wants to figure out what's going on. And it might have been Victor. I forget who said that. But I feel like for me, I initially in high school, prior to like when I was like going through the process, because I applied pretty early for the PSMD, right? It was the end of high school. I really thought I was going to be a pharmacist growing up. And then I had a couple of like shadowing experiences that I did initially just because my brother was doing it and I wanted to do everything my brother did. But I was like in a GI clinic for a big portion of my high school, and I really valued like the autonomy that physicians had, but really like the lifelong relationships that a doctor has compared to like nursing or EMTs. And you get that degree as well as like a PA or an NP, but I feel like the degree of trust, the degree of like lifelong education as well is something that's very unique to doctors, and that's something that I really loved, the continuity of care that you don't see in a lot of other fields. And so that's what really like pushed me away from pharmacy, which now I can't even imagine because I'm so bad unless I have sketchy.
That's so funny.
But that's what like I think like really switched and what really like cemented the fact that I was interested in medicine. I'm really glad I'm in medicine now.
Yeah, I came in actually also pharmacy.
Oh, really?
And then I took one chemistry class and I was like, whoa, no, let's do something else.
Yeah, I actually wasn't planning on doing anything medical. I always wanted to be a teacher and a basketball coach.
Oh, very specific too.
Yeah. Ball is life, what can I say?
Ball is life.
But like during my senior year of high school, I was living with my grandparents at the time, and my grandfather was getting really sick. He had like really bad heart disease. And so I started spending a lot more time with him and in the hospital. And so that's where I first got my exposure to medicine in general. And that's actually what made me want to become an EMT, because I wanted to at least be able to take care of him in an emergency situation. And then I've always been someone who is like very good in school and someone who loves to learn, and someone who wants to really understand things deeply, like the pathophys, especially for medicine. And I would actually argue with you guys that I think all medical specialties have that capability of knowing a lot about medicine. Like I would say right now, there are a lot of medics and nurses that know way more medicine than me right now and understand pathophys way more deeply than me right now. But I think I understood that I had the opportunity to pursue becoming a doctor because of just like the position I was in. I know that like my family could take care of me like financially. I know that I could take the time to study medicine. I know I have the ability to do it. And so like pursuing medicine is also a privilege. I think there's a lot more people
100%.
that have the capability to do it intellectually and mentally and like with their discipline, but I think sometimes a lot of people don't have the opportunity to do it for social or financial reasons.
100%. I
Yeah.
love that you said that. Like, this is like, we are privileged.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big privilege. So I guess kind of bouncing off, we know earlier we talked a lot about like tips for med school, or with like, I guess like self-care. Anything else that you guys wanted to add for med school?
I think you said this earlier, Omar, but I feel like trying to find mentorship is a really big aspect, and really like whether that's like cold emailing or really trying to get like early exposure to things. I think we were lucky because at least like we had rotations that were like, at least IM, like you did it your third year, you still had opportunities to like apply into IM. But if it was someone like some of my friends who were interested in like dermatology or like orthopedics, I feel like with those more competitive specialties, for those individuals who have any sort of inkling that maybe they want to do it, I feel like trying it in 1 year to find mentorship or find shadowing experiences to get a little bit more perspective into that field would be helpful for those individuals who might be listening to this podcast, because sometimes it's hard your M3 year when you're like knee deep into rotations to get that sort of exposure or mentorship. So really trying to put yourself out there M1 year, as well as taking care of yourself, because M1 year is a lot, but trying to get some of those early exposures.
For sure. We can go next. Big plug for learning how to learn.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that you can do.
I thought you
And
might mention that.
Yeah, I was itching the whole time
Yeah.
trying to not mention it, but I got to. Here I am, because I feel like I was not a good student at all, like ever. I tell my story all the time, so you guys are probably tired
a good
of
story.
hearing
No,
it.
it's good. It's
But I
good,
was
yeah.
like not a good student. Like I was like a B+ student at best. Sometimes
Which
I
is
got
still a good student. Everybody
seventh
gets.
grade. Seventh.
It's a table of nerds.
Seventh grade was the first time that I got like straight A's on one report card, and like never again really in high school or anything like that. But I had a decent GPA, but like I always thought like I was putting way too much time and effort into things, and I was just like, how do I make this like better, and then I started like reading a bunch of books and stuff, and doing like just like online courses, and just starting to like scour the internet just to like find like how to like easily like absorb information and easily have it stick, or an easier way. I was looking for an easier way to do these things. So I really have to like make a plug for like learning how to learn, and this doesn't even have to happen. This can happen like while people are taking like the EMT class, like for example, like there's lots that like this process doesn't just have to start once you get into medical school and you have to like start learning all of these like different drugs and conditions and all these like nitty gritty details. Like this process can start like as soon as like even for like high school students. Honestly, like you can, everyone at any stage of their career can learn how to learn and improve their like process and do a better job with it. And in medicine it's interesting because like especially in med school, because there's like different phases to med school. You the first preclinical years and then the clinical years, and you kind of have to like learn how to learn over again like during that time, because clinical years you're like your time is very like it's pretty short for like studying for exams that are also pretty high stakes, at least they were at UIC. So I think learning how to learn, self-care, and mentorship are the big ones for me, like making sure that you identify people that you trust and people that want to help you out and that are invested in your learning and in your career progression. So those are my top three.
I would say my biggest piece of advice would be to be flexible. So you never want to be on one end of the spectrum. You don't want to be someone that works so hard towards a goal and then you forget everything else. But you also don't want to be someone who's so relaxed that you never achieve your goal. So it's to be flexible, I would say.
For sure. Yeah. I like that too. And I like that. I would open that up to like being like open-minded as well, you know, and not taking things for granted and giving everything like a fair shot. Like a big part of my learning process was like taking how other people learned and trying it, you know, as silly as it sounded. I would always give it a try because I, you know, never knew when something was going to like work out for me versus when it wasn't. If something didn't work out for me, well, now I know that doesn't work for me. You know, so
everything's like give and take, and I learned how to do that better, I would say, during medical school. Like some days you just have to sit down and you have to work hard and study, and then the next day, you know, you could relax and sleep all day, go to the gym, go hang out, just as long as you're doing a little bit of everything throughout the week.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I think I would add one as well. I think all your tips have been great. So I'll kind of take a different perspective here with more of like a overall life tip, I think, which was just an interesting experience I had. I was once walking home with a student, another medical student, and you know, we were just talking about pathways and careers and, you know, getting to residency finally. I think this was in like my first or second year in medical school. And, you know, you know, like I think it'll be interesting once we get there. And I was saying, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, it'd just be really great to, you know, like finally really get your life started when, you know, you can finally, you know, settle down and get this, you know, going and whatnot. And I remember he just kind of like, it took him a second. He went, you know, I never really looked at it that way. You know, I really just feel like I'm already living life, you know, now. Like this is what it is, right? And so I think that's kind of my tip is to enjoy the process, right? Because no matter where you're at, even if it is before med school or if it's during or whatnot, just enjoy where you're at, enjoy what activities you're able to do now, enjoy what you can learn now, and then of course continue exploring. So I think now, like looking at now, I'm a fourth year medical student. And I'm thinking about like the first 2 years, and I think how rigorous it was. But now I think, where am I going to get like that opportunity again to just like be able to learn that much information? Like how much have I forgotten already? Like I'm like in the clinic now with like these different medical students, right? Like first through third years, and I'll be like, what is that anatomy term that like when you do this or like, you know, like, oh, and what's the criteria again for this? Like, and I'll be like, oh, I just took that shelf exam. Like, let me tell you. And I was like, I was you. I knew all of that, right? At one point. And here I am like months later and gone, you know? So just enjoy the process, enjoy where you're at. And enjoy life, right?
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think, you know, a lot of times when people are looking into deciding to apply to like med school, they're like afraid that like basically it's going to consume your whole, I mean, it does like take a large portion of your life and a lot of effort, but you know, I feel like, I don't know, I personally don't have like any regrets. I don't know how you guys feel, but I have zero regrets for pursuing med school, and I have zero, and I don't think like it limited me like just in a way that I wasn't able to enjoy time with my family or friends. I think it is limiting to a certain degree, right? But I feel like it wasn't like I was just studying 24/7. I was still like going out with friends. I was still like managed to come teach here, you know, for a little bit. And the same thing is true for residency. I think residency, I mean, obviously depending on the program, but at least at University of Chicago, we hang out at least once every 2 weeks with like different friends, and I see my family religiously I try to see them every weekend, at least, you know, for a couple hours to grab a meal or something like that. So there's definitely time, you know, you just have to be efficient with how you manage your time, you know, you have to prioritize, you learn how to prioritize certain things. So, you know, I don't have like any particular regrets for doing this, or for, you know, not going straight out of like, you know, undergrad to do this, or you know, because I feel like every step in the way, I think I've just been very grateful for every step along the way, you know, so I don't know if you guys feel any different or...
No, I feel the same.
Exactly the same.
Nice.
I really love my medical school experience. Even third year, which like honestly I think is one of my favorite years. I know it's hard, but I feel like even things I knew I'd most maybe not have go into, like OB, like there's so many, like this might be the only chance that I see like L&D, right? It's like going in, being excited every day, and really like taking the most out of every day and being grateful, as well as like excited to be there, is like a good mindset to have in these. Because like a lot of people go in, they just like don't really want to be there, they don't take a lot out, but this might don't be the only time you see it in like your life, which is cool to say and cool to see.
That's I think a huge thing that we haven't mentioned too much is just attitude throughout medical school, particularly rotations. I mean, I think if you come ready to work on time, happy to be there, like you've already gotten to like a high pass out of a high pass to honor system. Like, I mean, like you're already like most of the way there, even if you don't know anything, like, because they want people that are ready, that they're actually interested to be there. Right. I mean, a lot of these places, like, maybe they get paid extra that you're there, maybe they don't, and they're like, oh man, another student, right? So if you're just happy to be there, I feel like that really shows through, right?
Yeah,
for sure. A good segue, actually, the next topic that I wanted to talk about was like how to best prepare like an application like for residency, like tips for like success. Overall, though, the theme that I wanted to kind of put out there was like passion, like we were talking about earlier, and doing things that you're passionate in. A lot of times, and you, obviously you guys just went through interviews, so you guys can interject if you feel differently, but a lot of the times, when I was doing my interviews, I got questions on like every like one of my hobbies and everything like that, and I felt like sometimes they were trying to see like if I was like really passionate about something, or if I was just doing it again to just check a box off, and say that I did something. So I think passion is a big one, and being passionate in everything that you do, and giving it, putting enough effort into things that you do too. Like if you, if you decide to, be like a leader of an organization, making sure that, you are able to, fulfill the role and not just like, half-ass it, for lack of a better term, and so I think passion drives a lot of things, and it leads to like a lot of success. So I would say like overall that's like my biggest tip for setting up a good application. But obviously we're going to come up with a lot of other tips too. Does anyone else have anything they want to say?
Sure, yeah, I could talk a little bit about it. I think is just like as you submit these applications, right, they're like resumes, right? So you're submitting your resume, right? But I think it's more than that. Like you want to tell your story, right? So we're talking about like bringing in your passions, bringing in like what was your thought process as you went through this, but also bringing in your personality. Like what is it that you enjoy? What do you like about that? Like, and again, like as we talked about before, like instead of just saying it, show it, right? So like show like, I don't know, like I'm like interested in a bunch of like finance and such, right? Like, so I could say I'm detail oriented, or I could tell you about the million spreadsheets that I like to like work on, right? Like, because that's just how my brain works, right? Like I like to put it down so I can see all the numbers, right? Like, and so just showing things and telling your story, I think is a really important part of a good application. And then also just thinking, like looking from the outside, like how would other people view this application? Like, so for mine, like it's all emergency medicine, right? So, and then I had to think about that. I go, okay, so this is all emergency medicine. I'm applying to internal medicine programs exclusively, right? So how are they going to view this? Because they don't know where you applied to, right? So then for my personal statement, which is of course one of the biggest things, of course I had to write about that, right? I just thought like there would be no other way to do it. So I kind of like made it into a joke. Like one of my first lines is like, I knew I was going into emergency medicine until I didn't. Like, and again, that came up in pretty much every interview. And so then I would make the joke like, yeah, no, I didn't even apply into emergency medicine because again, they don't know, right? So like if you took one look at my resume and you didn't see that personal statement or didn't have me telling you that I didn't apply, like if it was me looking at mine, I'd be like, well, yeah, he went into emergency medicine. Like he wants to go into that and he's just here just in case he doesn't get into that or something like that, right? So telling a story, being honest about where you're coming from and where you want to go, right?
Nice.
I don't know if I have much to add, but I feel like really trying to like highlight through your experiences the things that you're passionate about, and I guess like the qualities that feel like puts you apart or sets you apart compared to other people as well. I feel like a lot of my application was the things that I was passionate about, which was like public health. So I was like able to kind of interweave my MPH as well as like what I did on campus, as well as like EMT. Like I really was interested in education as well. So those were the things I highlighted. And a tip to anyone, anything that shows up on your application will be asked on your interview. So don't put something, even if it's like a small line in your hobby, like they might ask you like, I remember someone was like, they asked them to like describe their favorite dish they cooked. And then so I remember talking to someone who's never cooked in their life, and they like put that down on their hobbies. And so
Why
like,
would you do that? You
I
didn't
have
have
no
any
idea.
hobbies?
Yeah.
Like, what?
I've heard some bad stories,
Yeah.
but like I've heard like people like put like, oh, I've spent this amount of time playing the piano since I was young, and then there's a back when this was like a story.
There's
from
a
back
piano
when
there?
there's a piano in the room, or like, would you
No.
want to play something? And they're like, actually, I don't know how to play the piano.
No, my fingers are sore this
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah, so don't lie. Lying is not okay.
Not okay.
Yeah.
I went to like an Advocate Christ. I think they did like it was really helpful. They like did like a breakdown of like things, how to think about residency application. And they told a story about how one person applied to their program and put down the fact that they were like a grandmaster in chess. And so the person who interviewed them was like really good at chess. And so he was like, what would you do? I don't play chess, by the way. So they're like, what would you do in this position? And then the guy like totally didn't know because he just lied about it. So
That's insane.
I know, that's crazy.
really weird.
I can't even fathom people.
Yeah.
doing that. I don't know.
I would
that
just
would go
quit.
straight over my
Yeah.
head. I'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, that's great. I'm glad you did that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I would never catch it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But definitely
Yeah.
like framing your application in a way that you feel like highlights yourself. Similarly, I feel like something that I think like individuals who may have came from like a non-traditional route, maybe took a couple of like gap years within medical school, or like took a break within medical school, maybe had some red flags, quote unquote. I feel like using your application to kind of talk about what those circumstances were, how they grew, to kind of like bridge any sort of red flags that program might have if they were trying to look at them and be like, maybe we don't want this person. So trying to kind of correct any sort of misconceptions or help the application is like your personal statement is a great place to do that as well.
Yeah,
Nice.
I agree.
Anything you want to add? I know
don't have
everyone's
anything
already
different to
taken.
add.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been talking a while, Rowanne.
Do you guys have like any questions for me? I feel like, you know, from the intern perspective,
Yeah.
anything that comes to mind you're itching to ask, I'm an open book, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, we are pretty close to our ending time here, but just kind of common mistakes maybe as like an intern. What do you think everybody kind of the common thing that they do? How can you avoid it?
Yeah, so you know, when you first start, I think, and for me too, I think you kind of it's very overwhelming at first. Particularly, I started in the ICU. Like that was my very first rotation. Like I literally walked into the hospital my first rotation, and I was in the ICU.
That's
hard.
Which is like the toughest place to be in the hospital outside of like a surgical specialty, right? So, you know, quickly my biggest thing was like, oh, well, I have to like learn all the medicine like as quickly as possible, and like, you know, make sure that I'm doing all the right things. But, you know, when you start to think about things like that, you kind of leave away some of the humanity of medicine, you know, and that's one of the things. That's like, I think that was like that is a common mistake, and that was a mistake that I made, like as far as like, you know, talking to the patient, you know, as a human, like right now how we're having a conversation, you know, like, and the same thing for like my time in like the outpatient clinics, you know, I would like be like, okay, a patient would walk in, and you know, you prep for those appointments, so you have like a list of things that you want to talk to them about, like healthcare maintenance, or like, you know, abnormal lab values that they got like the last time they were here that you want to follow up on. And you kind of like have your agenda, but you also have to like think about like, you know, getting to know them, and like you know, establishing some sort of a relationship with you know, your patients. I think that's all super valuable. And like that has like, as soon as I realized that was something that I, you know, should be doing, like and I realized this pretty early on. It was like my first like month or month and a half. Like things have been going really well for me as far as like my interactions with patients. Like I like
awesome.
there's been multiple times where I have had a patients in like on the wards in internal medicine, and like people are like, you're just so great. Like, can you be my like primary care like doctor? Like, can you give me your card to be? I'm like, what?
Your card? You're like, no, I don't have any cards.
Yeah. Well, I have some cards, but they're not like, I don't rarely give them away. But I'll be like, yeah, just ask for me, and I'm like happy to help. But it's just like, so like just making that change, and I think like making sure that like, you know, you are giving that the amount of like time and effort that it deserves is just like a big thing. So that's like one mistake out of many. Yeah, that's more, I guess, you know, making sure too that it's like self-care too. Like it comes down to self-care as well. Like, you know, I was talking about like how I had GERD and stuff like that, you know, self-care was another mistake because I kind of like let myself go with that, you know. And like it's very easy to be like, you know, before I was like, oh, I had a hard day, so let me treat myself. And like after a while, it's like, well, I've had a hard day every day for like 2 weeks, you know.
So it was a hard week.
It was a hard week. It was a hard week, and I gained like 5 pounds. You know, like, it's gonna be a hard month. But yeah, so just like self-care. You know?
Yeah.
Anything else that you guys?
Yeah, it's our closing minutes here.
Yeah. It's okay if you don't.
Yeah,
No
I don't
big
have
deal.
any questions.
Yeah. No worries.
I'll probably have questions, and then I'll have to hit you up
Yeah.
after the interview.
Yeah, I was gonna say all the questions are coming. Yeah, once we start.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hopefully you get to see. I don't know if you guys are interested in University of Chicago or not, but I hope to see you guys there. It's a great place to be, and I think you guys would all be great there. So, okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Any
you.
last minutes things?
I would say, since we're all passionate about mentorship and we didn't really get into the nitty gritty about applying to residency or applying to medical school, like we could share our emails with people that are interested or have questions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, I don't have any last minute things. No, ball is life. That's
Ball is life.
Yeah.
Ended on that. There it is.
Great. Awesome.
All right.